Hey everyone, my name is Mohit Srinivasan. I work at Ford Motor Company as a research engineer. I basically met Alex through a Google search online, through his website and coaching program, and have been in touch with him, been working with him since. And yeah, I moved to the US for grad school and subsequently now for my job. And I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Play a lot of tennis. So if any of you want to play tennis, let me know.
Hi there, Coach Alex here from A-Team Fitness. Thanks for listening as I share incredible transformation stories directly from the source themselves, the individuals doing the work and seeing the results. We'll take a behind-the-curtain peek at the mental and physical changes that make for amazing transformation. I'm glad you're here, and after the episode, I hope you feel empowered to begin making some transformative changes of your own. Let's dive in.
First and foremost, Mohit, thank you for being here. The way that the circumstances under which we met and have worked together and have become since friends is different than the way that I meet most people.
Okay.
That come see me, in that it was totally by random.
Yeah. It was literally a Google search.
Which is still, it blows my mind. You're one of I can count on one hand in my career the number of times that's happened, that somebody has done a random Google search and found me and come in. Usually people who find me through somebody that we mutually know, a friend, a client, or, whatever. And it's interesting because all of the people that I've met who have found me through random Google searches have been some of my favorite people. And it's so interesting because I just imagine like me doing a random search for a coach like that, I would be naturally a little bit more apprehensive, a little more skeptical. So I'm like, hiring a coach, especially a fitness coach, is a very personal thing. It's a very important, it's very meaningful. It's very, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting to me how amazing all the random people that have found me have been.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just super lucky. I don't have the crazies finding me on Google.
No, it's also like positive energy attracts positive energy too, right? In some sense, it's like I tend to like notice that in general, like that's why I think I gelled very well with you. Like even though it was like a random Google search, and I was like, oh, okay, here's a fitness coach. Let's try this out. I think like a couple of sessions in, I knew like, okay, this is gonna work out. So yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. So let's rewind a little bit chronologically. We're talking about obviously when you and I met, when you signed up to join my coaching program. But let's go backwards, and I want to get a little bit of your backstory. So as far back as you'd like to go, take us through kind of your life until the moment you reached out to me.
All right. In like what, 2 minutes?
In as much time as you feel like you need. If we're a little long-winded, I'll stop you. But give me the Cliff Notes version.
I mean, I was born in Mumbai, India. That was 1994. I grew up, in Mumbai, in the suburbs. Basically, we were initially at a house, and then we moved houses in 2003. And then since 2003, I was living in another part of Mumbai. Basically did my high school there, ate lots of street food, just had a lot of fun. I did undergrad there in Mumbai itself. I went to VJTI, which is known as Veer Mata Jijabai Technological Institute. It was previously known as Victoria Jubilee Technical Institute. So it was established during the British era in India. So back in, I think, 1887 was when it was established. So amazing institute, had a good time there. And then I always kind of knew that I wanted to pursue like a math related career. So I was looking into economics. I was looking into astrophysics at some point, which right now I'm like, okay, thank God I didn't do that because I knew I wouldn't be good at it. Yeah, I basically wanted to kind of get into research and things like that. And I knew I wanted to do like a PhD because I really enjoy doing research. I started, kind of focusing on that part of my sort of academic career and started applying for grad school in the US. Like I knew there were a bunch of universities here which were pretty good for the things that I was looking at. So yeah, I did I gave the usual standardized tests like the GRE, the TOEFL, like the English language test. Moved here in 2016. I moved to Georgia Tech to pursue my master's. So I actually came here for my master's. But like I said, I always wanted to do a PhD, but then there were a lot of like variables. Finding an advisor, like I didn't have an advisor at the time. Finding funding, like you need to have, your advisor needs to fund you for the PhD program. Otherwise, like it's financially not possible to do that for like 4 years or 5 years, right? So I spent a year taking courses and then I met my advisor, started working with him. So that was like 2017. So I officially sort of started my PhD work in 2017, wrapped it up in 2020. So it was like 3 years. And then after graduation, I was just doing job search. I found Ford, found Michigan, and then I found you. So that was the version of my life.
I'm so, I want to ask you a couple questions about your move to the US when you first moved to Georgia Tech for your master's program. Because moving to a different country is a pretty big deal. There's a lot of things are different. I think about my experiences traveling to other countries, even for just a short period of time, and how much of a little bit of a culture shock and just how different everything was and trying to figure things out. So I can only imagine moving for an extended period of time to another country is that, but a lot bigger of a deal. So was there anything when you first moved for your master's program to Georgia Tech to the US, was there anything specifically about being in the US that surprised you?
Surprised? The first thing that surprised me was the number of people that I see on the roads just walking around. Like Mumbai is there's a lot of people around. Some areas are just very crowded, right? So when you're walking around, there's usually a lot of people. When I moved here, I didn't see that. Like the sidewalks used to be pretty empty. That really actually took me a bit of time to get used to it. The other sort of aspect that I got used to was the fact that people don't honk here on the roads. And in India, it's like a lot of honking as well. So that was another thing that I got used to. So things like that, just small things like that. In terms of like adjusting to the country and the place, I did not struggle. Like I wouldn't say I got like homesick. There were like, moments where, I'd want to see mom, dad, or I'd want to see friends back home. It would be a little tough, but then I was also sort of, prepared for this move, like since a while. Like I knew that I would move abroad. I knew I'd move abroad. That kind of had like a cushioning effect, like it was mentally, I was kind of prepared for it. Yeah, there were definitely moments where, like I wanted to go back, just visit mom, dad for a while, come back. Yeah. And grad school kept me pretty busy. So like it was, you'd feel bad about sometime, or you'd feel homesick, but then grad school would kind of remind you that, hey, it's time to get the homework assignment done.
So kind of a super random question on that topic, and I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. Who's got better food, the US or Mumbai?
I think it's, to be very honest, I think it's just different cultures and cuisines, right? So I can't like make an apples to apples like comparison on that. I would say like for vegetarians, which I am, India has a lot more sort of options. Whereas in the US, Atlanta and Ann Arbor, Michigan, like I've had no issues finding vegetarian food. Like it's always been available. I think cuisine in the Americas is also like, it's nice because there's very specific dishes that, I tried. Like for example, in Atlanta, I tried grits for the first time, which was interesting. It was nice. We went to, I think, Cracker Barrel. We went paintballing with sort of the lab group that I was part of. We went to Cracker Barrel and I had grits there for the first time. So, and just having good American burgers, but with the black bean patty, that's always good. I guess my sort of long answer is it's just two different types of cuisines and the emphasis on flavor is different. Slightly more difficult for me to find vegetarian food in some restaurants here if I go into like not so big cities. Overall, it's been very interesting to taste different things here. Yeah.
Okay. What's the favorite dish in the US that you've tried since you've come here?
It's not an American like cuisine, but in Atlanta, there is this Ethiopian restaurant called Desta. And I absolutely love that place. My lab mate introduced me to that restaurant, and it's on this stretch of highway called Buford Highway, where there's a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of Asian restaurants there. It's very multicultural. That was the first time I had Ethiopian food, and I think I like it so much because it's very similar to Indian food as well in terms of the pulses that they use. Like they use a lot of lentils in their food. They have like this type of bread called injera bread, which is a fermented batter that's fermented. So it's like crepe basically. And Indians have a very similar sort of dish as well. So, but just in terms of like the flavor and the quality of the food, I think that's definitely like one of the best. And in Ann Arbor, I like frita batidos.
Okay.
That's
Always a favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you tried the Ethiopian restaurant in Ann Arbor?
No, I haven't. I've looked at it.
Okay.
I haven't tried it yet. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that is I'm really interested to know about your move to the US is obviously one of the big and unique challenges of that is you're leaving your home where you've grown up, where you know people, you have friends, and you're coming to a place where you may not know anyone, and you have to kind of find friends and build friendships. And it's interesting to me that I think, my kind of observations on just friendship in general is it's easy for us as children to make friends because we're kind of forced into situations that lead to those relationships. We're stuck in a class together for multiple hours throughout the day. None of us really want to be there. So we're all kind of in this shared misery, and we kind of come to know each other and get familiar with each other. And we realize it's us against school because we all just want to
share the pain. Yeah, you share the pain. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we kind of build our friendships from there. We're also kind of all trying to figure out who we are together. And like, there's that kind of shared experience.
Yeah.
And my observation is once we become adults, for a lot of people, when we have more responsibility, when we have work obligations, when we're just have so much more going on, one, not only do we not have the time necessarily to put as much into those relationships, but we also, I think, as adults realize a lot of us don't actually know how to make friends without the constraints of being in a class together or being in those shared experiences. So I'm curious because for as long as I've known you, you've always been a really extroverted, outgoing guy. We've had this conversation a few times now, but I'm curious, what was it like for you, and kind of how did you approach meeting people and making new friends in a new country?
In grad school, it was pretty easy because, as you mentioned, like there's a lot of students from India who come and, pursue their masters or their doctorate programs here. So there's a big batch of like colleagues who will join you here. And if you are one of those students who are enrolled in one of like the core, programs, as they say, like electrical engineering, like ECE or mechanical or whatever, chances are you'll have a big group of like people from your home country, in my case, India, as well. So it was very easy to make friends. But one of the things that I sort of emphasized, within myself was to kind of also make friends with the international community and not just stick with friends from India. And the reason being that I wanted to learn more about different cultures, essentially, because I think that's like a very big blessing that you get for people who have the sort of the blessing to study abroad and experience different cultures abroad. I think that's something that, one should take advantage of. For me, it was about, since I was like, trying to find advisors and trying to enroll in the PhD program, I met some people when I was working with one professor, just trying to understand if I would be a good fit in his lab. I met some people by just working in that lab, essentially. So there were a bunch of people from Saudi Arabia, from Greece, from Iran. So it was a good group, really nice people. So that's one way I made friends, literally just, through grad school. So it was through the courses that I took. So just working together for assignments and things like that. Outside of that, I didn't play too much of tennis during grad school just because it was so hectic. If I were to compare like my time right now in Michigan, like most of the people that I've met right now is through tennis, through the tennis groups. So I'm playing at a club here. So I just frequently meet a lot of people there. And that's kind of like my socializing time. one of my colleagues lives in Michigan, so in Ann Arbor. So he introduced me to his friend group last year when I moved here. So, I just met them and started hanging out with them. And then again, like a very diverse, multicultural group. So that's how I kind of went about with it. I didn't like force myself to join like groups as such, but I kind of just went with the flow, tried to keep myself open to different opportunities to meeting people. And that kind of worked out.
And that's really, it's really interesting to hear you say that too, of not kind of forcing yourself into these groups, but to kind of go with the flow, which you are definitely a go with the flow kind of guy. And, but the other interesting thing too, we talked about with school, obviously there's that shared interest of you might be studying the same thing, you're going through the same challenges. There's the kind of shared misery of deadlines and projects and papers and whatnot. And we lose that ability. But what you did, which is really cool, is you identified an interest that you had, which was tennis, something you've done most of your life. And you found a way to get around other people who had the same shared interest.
Yeah.
And then just like when you're in school, you are familiar with people, you start to learn about them, you start to figure out what your shared interests are. And then that's how you figure out who are your friends and who are just classmates. And you were able to do that via the tennis, it sounds like.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Tennis has had like a bunch of different like advantages for me. And this is definitely one of them, especially here, like back in India, I used to play tennis very regularly, but then it was more of like, coaching sessions, right? Like until I was, I think 15 or something, I was still enrolled in like coaching sessions, trying to get better. And then undergrad, again, tennis was like on and off. And there aren't as many tennis courts in Mumbai as I would like see here, because of space constraints and things like that. So playing tennis was a bit more tough there. So I didn't meet as many people, I would say, like during my sort of last couple of years in India. But then, once I moved here, it's been really good. That's one way I've actually used my sort of personal interest and someone else's personal interest to kind of like meet them, it's, and just wonderful people. Like, it's just very nice to hang out with them. Yeah.
I love it. Now, you mentioned tennis, playing back in Mumbai. And so I'm curious to hear about your kind of experience with not only tennis, but also other forms of exercise and just fitness in general. What was your experience with that growing up, going through grad school, again, leading up to when you and I met?
Yeah. In India, I would say it was two things for me. So it was tennis. I used to go to the coaching sessions, play a lot. That was sort of the main form of exercise. And then on the side, like when I was probably like, until I was, I guess, 12 maybe or 13, like we would play a lot of cricket on the streets, a lot of soccer on the streets, like outside my house. So I had a bunch of friends locally. So those were kind of like the two main exercises or like forms of physical exercise. The one thing that I've talked to somebody else about this as well, which is hiking, for example, was not a thing for us. Like growing up, at least it wasn't for me in Mumbai. Like we wouldn't actively go for trails. Like there aren't like trails that you can go to like after a 40-minute drive. Like here in Ann Arbor, you can go to Barton or you can go to some other place, like take a 40-minute drive or drive 2 hours, go to Holland. That wasn't a thing for us, like for me growing up. So hiking was something new that I picked up when I came to the US. That concept of just, going to national parks, doing like a 2-hour hike or whatever. But in India, it was just tennis and it was just playing cricket, soccer out on the streets pretty much. Here, so when I moved here, again, like the first year that I was here in the US, it was very hectic because I was trying to find advisors for, my PhD, and courses were pretty intense at Georgia Tech. So I was trying to kind of cope up with that. So I didn't really pay much attention at all, like actually zero attention to fitness. And then 2017, I started sort of working out more regularly in the gym, started focusing more on my diet. I still didn't play as much tennis. I did 2017, I think fall, I practiced quite a lot. And then there was a tournament at Georgia Tech, which I didn't think I'd win it, but I won it, which is nice. But yeah, so I played a bit of tennis there. But then after that, it's mainly been sort of workouts in the gym. After I moved here, I met you, and then I've sort of done the course through you. So I still continue like going to the gym, but it's sort of a combination of tennis, the gym, and then doing the regular sort of hikes whenever I can.
What role has all of these physical activities and just fitness in general, what role has that played in your life? Not only in the past, but now, and how might that be different in the roles that it played then versus now?
For me, more than I guess like just, the physical advantages of an exercise, it's more about how I can use the exercises and my time at the gym or tennis to kind of relieve some of the stress in general. It's sort of the hour and a half. I usually spend about 90 minutes in the gym, like in the morning. So the hour and a half in the gym, and then on an average, it's about 2 to 2.5 hours, maybe on the tennis court. Those times are the times when I completely zone out, don't think about anything else. My phone is in the bag. Otherwise, I think I've told you, like if my phone, if I get a notification, my instant reaction is to open it and reply to the person. Like I don't even keep it waiting. But yeah, during the gym or even during tennis, it's in the bag, So it helps to kind of just zone out, remove all the stress, just focus, right? Like just focus your mind on sort of one single task. And that helps quite a lot. Like growing up, tennis, we used to have these competitive exams in India. And I know a bunch of my friends, for example, used to take holidays before the exams and just like completely shut off and not do anything, just literally like study. For me, that didn't work. Like I would still go to tennis and I would still like continue playing. And it kind of helped me perform better, because I don't think there's any doubt that there is a very high correlation between physical exercise and sort of your performance in general in life, right? Like your efficiency levels. It's been a great form of like stress relief. And then at the same time, it's also helped like with performing other tasks during the day in a more efficient manner. Like one distinct advantage that I think helps is I don't rely on coffee to get that energy. So previously, I mean, if I didn't work out, then I'd have to like drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning to kind of get that initial kick, keep that going until like the afternoon or something. So now if I work out in the gym in the morning, like that's all I need. Like I can keep going until evening, and then yeah, sure, I get tired. But I think that's been like a big advantage.
So the thing that I love about what you just said is finding and using the exercise both in the mornings in the gym, but also the times that you're playing tennis,
yeah,
a chance to unplug from everything else that's going on in your life, which a lot of people, I think most people know that we all need an activity to unplug. We can't constantly be, strapped into sending text messages or emails or being on social media, scrolling, whatever. But I think a lot of people mistake unplugging for doing nothing or like vegging out on the TV or just not doing anything. When in reality, what you're doing is perfect, because not only are you killing a couple of birds with one stone, you're getting your physical activity, you're able to meet people and create those friendships and do something, just a fun activity. But it's a good opportunity to leave your phone in the bag.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I think it also depends. Like, so the tennis, whenever I play tennis, it's not coaching sessions, right? Like I'm not part of there's not somebody who's coaching me. Like I actively try to stay very competitive on the court, and I play USTA leagues. So I play competitive matches, and I'm actively trying to kind of improve myself. Like every time I play, like I try to find out what my weaknesses are, how can I improve? So those sort of that time on the court is very focused on being competitive and how I can sort of improve myself, right? And that helps a lot. Like it kind of translates in general in life. Like it makes me more strong. It makes me sort of mentally more tough, right? Like how you can sort of overcome certain challenges. If I usually play with the people I play with are like super good. And so it's very hard like to, stay that competitive with them. But that's the part that helps me improve. And that kind of also translates into my work. Like if there is a problem that I have issues figuring out, like I'll keep going at it. And so it kind of, it's like I said, it's not just like 2 hours of physical exercise and that's it, where I just zone off. There's a lot more involved in that. Yeah, there's a lot of advantages.
Absolutely. And so in hearing you say that too, I'm curious, obviously there, as you've explained, there've been periods of your life where you were less active because you were busy with your finding an advisor and just generally going through your programs. There are times where you've been more active now, early in the past. If you think about not just, as you're mentioning, not just the physical benefits, not just having more energy, not having to rely on coffee, having a stress outlet for yourself, how has being physically active changed how you think about yourself, about your work, about everything that you do? How has it changed in those moments where you are more active, like now, versus periods of time where you weren't as physically active?
I think the instant changes, like in positivity, for example, if there's any stressful situation that pops up in life in general, then previously my reaction was to kind of, like worry about it and stuff. But now it's much more better. Like my reaction is more like, yeah, we'll deal with it. And this translates to what I was talking about, like on the tennis court, right? Like when you constantly go through these like moments of these tough moments, like where you kind of have to outperform yourself, that I think has a very big impact on how you think outside your sort of, outside the tennis court for me. So whenever I face any like tough situation, then now the reaction is to kind of take a deep breath and just, deal with it. Like that sort of mental toughness and positivity, I think has grown in me quite a lot. And this didn't exist. Like I said, this did not exist even in India when I was playing tennis. It didn't exist because back then I would just play for 2 hours. I didn't think too much about like, how this is actually affecting my sort of general like life. But then once I started facing the stresses of grad school, things like that, like job search and all of that, that's when I started realizing that I can sort of use more of my experience like in the gym or in the tennis court and translate that to real life. Yeah, I think that is the biggest like change in me, I would say.
It's so true. I'm always telling people about the mental benefits of getting in the gym or doing a physical activity like tennis or doing something that challenges you in a physical way. And sometimes it challenges you in a mental way of either figuring out how to get better at that particular activity or in trying to outperform yourself and figure out how to continue to elevate your performance in therein. And the analogy that I typically use with people is if someone's in the weight room and they're doing like a squat, so they're loading a barbell with hundreds of pounds and they're going to put it on their back and they're going to try to squat it. And they've never done that weight before. They don't know exactly if they can. They might feel pretty confident that they can based on prior performance, but they've never actually done it. So there's those butterflies you get in your stomach. And it's a very real, obviously having hundreds of pounds on your back, if you do it right, all good. If you do it wrong, it has a very real capacity to injure you in that way, which contributes to some of the butterflies and the nervousness with kind of stepping up and unwrapping the bar and realizing you're squatting. And now as you lower yourself to the ground, you realize you got to go back up and you're just really hoping that you can. And then kind of, as you start to come out of it and you are lifting it, that kind of sense of relief of like, okay, I got this. I did this. I can do this. And how interesting it is that translates to giving a presentation at work, right? Those little butterflies, you got to speak in front of people and you're kind of nervous about it. You're not sure what they're going to think. But when you don't have that gym experience, that can be paralyzing. Yeah. Right? That anxiety and that fear about giving that presentation. For somebody who's come in that morning out of squatting hundreds of pounds they've not done before, suddenly they got a different perspective, right? They're like, okay, I feel these butterflies and I might be a little nervous for this presentation, but I understand this feeling because I've had this feeling before. I had it when I squatted in the gym and I was able to do that. I was brave enough to try that and I succeeded. So why can't I do this? Yeah. And also, worst case scenario of a presentation is, it doesn't go as well as you'd like. Worst case scenario, squatting hundreds of pounds is pretty bad. Right?
Exactly.
And so that is kind of what I take from what you're explaining is something similar in just it gives you different perspective when you challenge yourself in these types of activities, these types of physical activities.
Yeah.
You give yourself new perspective on your capabilities.
Yep.
That then.
Yeah, exactly. And like the other sort of thing that I struggled with initially was I started playing like last year, I started playing a lot of like tournaments and matches with different people, like people from Detroit, Southfield, all of that. So I started playing with a lot of unknown people, like in competitive matches. And then they had different like levels of like strengths and weaknesses, right? So that was always like, I struggled with that initially. I was like, oh, this is an unknown person, am I going to win? Then thoughts start creeping up and then your mind kind of goes down a rabbit hole and then you basically mess up the match. Eventually, like once you start playing enough people, like once you start, even if you don't win, like once you start playing enough unknown people and then you start winning, then you have the confidence to say to yourself that, okay, next time I meet someone unknown, it's fine. I've done this before. And that literally translates to life outside the tennis court, right? Like if there's a problem that arises, which you've never faced before, which always happens, right? Then you can tell yourself that you've done this before. It was on the tennis court and this is here. So, you can do it. So
yes, I'm so glad that you said that because it really comes down to learning how to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Right. If there's a big work project that if someone thinks about, improving their performance in all areas of their life. So maybe they want to level up in their career. They want to get the promotion. They want to climb the ladder. They want to, be in a higher position than they are now. That's going to require taking on tasks and projects that they may not have much experience with. They might have never done before at a level that they're unfamiliar with. And the only way one's going to traverse to that new area, that new terrain, is at some point they're going to have to take a little bit of a leap of faith and just say, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to trust myself that I can figure it out.
Yeah, I think you need to do that. And I've forced myself to do that, like just in general, like just trying to take risks that I think I know I can do it, but I've never done it before. But if I don't take that risk, I lose that opportunity, right, to improve. And unless you get your hands dirty and into the weed of things, like you don't improve as a person. So yeah, 100%.
Now, when you shortly after you moved here to Ann Arbor, you and I live in the same city. You found me, as we said early on, you found me via Google search.
Yeah.
And you gave me a call and we talked over the phone. Tell me a little bit about what drove you to seek out a coach in that moment.
I think, when I moved here, I didn't know anybody in the city. So it was also during the pandemic, like it was not the start, but it was kind of like in the middle of the pandemic, right? It was December 2020. So I didn't know anyone. The last semester at Georgia Tech was also very stressful because it was my thesis defense. I was extremely busy with finishing up grad school essentially. So I didn't focus too much on fitness and just playing tennis or going to the gym. So I would say I wanted to kind of get back into the rhythm of things, but I always wanted to kind of work with a trainer to have very specific exercises that are suitable for my sort of body. And so that thought was always there in my mind. And I knew I would kind of do this after I get a job because it was like not possible to do that during grad school, just physical, like monetary constraints and stuff. Yeah. I mean, so then I started looking and I was like, okay, this is one way I can kill some time, right? It was also winter here, so like not many people were outside. So this is one way I can kill time, like in the gym, just start getting into the rhythm of things again. Yeah, I literally just Googled physical trainers in Ann Arbor and I read really good reviews about you. So I thought, okay, let's give that a shot. And yeah, that's how I called you.
And when we talked, I think we actually had a couple of phone calls. And because I remember at first, you were looking to get back into strength training and getting some specific direction with exercises in that regard to kind of get back into the rhythm and things, as you said. And at the time, I think you were definitely looking for an in-person component. right? And then
Yeah.
in our conversations, as most people do when they look for a trainer, they're looking for someone to go see in a gym, and show them the exercises. And then, on our first phone call, I remember mentioning that it was an online coaching program.
Yeah.
And which is new for a lot of people. It can be a little bit unfamiliar. And dare I say, there was a little bit of apprehension at first. You were kind of figuring out, okay, what is this thing? Like, what is this? What's this going to be like? What's the deal? Tell me about what was going through your head then when you were first kind of introduced to the concept of an online coaching program, and what you thought in that moment.
It wasn't like out of this world, because we were already into the pandemic, and Zoom and WebEx was like the thing, right? So it wasn't out of this world, but my prior experience with working out or just watching videos and stuff has been of people like, doing in-person programs. Like I know friends who've done in-person programs. So that was sort of like a foundation in my head. It was like a bias, right? Like, okay, this is a thing that needs to be done in person, and there is no other way to do it. Also, like tennis, for example, like you can't teach it. I don't think you can teach tennis online, because that's like difficult to do, because there's very specific sort of motions that you need to teach in person. So there was all this like bias in my head before, but then like I got some information from you, and then I thought about it, and it made sense to me, because I think one of the sort of advantages was like I was really motivated to like start the program and then finish it, right? Like continue it, learn from you. So I knew that even if it was an online program, I would still wake up in the morning and go to the gym. Like I knew that I had that motivation in me. But then the apprehensions were mainly towards like, if there's a specific exercise that I need to do, then how do I make sure that I have the right form or the correct posture for it, and so on. As I started doing those exercises, I also realized that, you had very good instructions in your app, and, in our sort of weekly sessions, we would talk about it. So I think a couple of times I also told you that I don't think my posture is correct. So you suggested like ways to improve it. So as we went along, my sort of outlook about it like changed dramatically, like 180 degrees. Yeah, I think like that initial bias was what was like causing those apprehensions. I think it was like just short-lived. It wasn't like a long-term thing.
Do you think that as you went through the program, and as you said, you were kind of responsible to be driven to get to the gym on your own, and albeit with support, but not in-person support, do the exercises, that it kind of in some ways set you up to take more ownership over the process as a whole?
Yeah, definitely. I think, because it was very natural for me. Like I said, like if, like even today, I told you, right? Like I didn't go to the gym today, and I already feel like weird. It was it's very natural for me to feel that way, even if I skip one day. So that ownership component, like I think it exists in me by default. So I never had an issue with it.
I'm curious, what does it, your fitness journey is one of kind of ebbs and flows. Right?
Yeah.
There are times when you're really on top of your game. Then there are times when things get busy and you get off track a little bit, and then you get back on. And in that time, I think with every flow and with every ebb, you get a little bit better at it all. You get a little bit more of the benefits of it. So my question for you is, what does it mean to you in the entirety of your experience with fitness right now? What does it mean to you to have gotten to the point where you're at, and to have come as far as you have in that journey?
I mean, things I've learned, most important thing is diet, I think, which is something I learned from you as well, like quite a lot, when we were tracking the sort of the amount of like nutrients that I would consume in a day and stuff, like how many carbs, how many proteins. Diet is like, I would say, a major part. I mean, I don't know, I'm like still an amateur in all this. So, but in my experience, like diet is the number one sort of influencing factor. Even if you work out like crazy, if your diet isn't good, I don't think you see the effects. So that was the first thing I learned. And truly, when I started tracking the calories, and not just calories, but just the amount of carbs or proteins I would consume, that's when I realized that, I need to work on this part of my diet more, or this part. And oh, a banana has like 30 grams of carbs. I didn't know that. Okay. I can't eat like 5 bananas a day now. So that was the number one thing I learned. I also learned like that I really love cardio. Like I knew I liked cardio, and because of tennis, like it was natural for me, but it was still like normal. Like I wouldn't say I was like, you know, focusing on cardio. But then this started prior to when I met you as well. Like when I started going to the gym, I would start working out on the treadmill more. And then like I realized that I can sort of do sustained treadmill workouts at higher speeds for a pretty long time. Like so now I can do about like I would say 40 to 45 minutes, and then get like a really really good, like I'll know that I've worked myself out at the end of it. So but it's something that I look forward to every day. It's not like, oh, I need to run on the treadmill, I don't want to do this. So I learned that about myself over the years, that like my cardiovascular strength is much better than what it was before. And again, that translates to like just different things in life. Like I remember when I moved here to Michigan, like my house has like a staircase. So I was shifting some stuff up, and I realized like, man, I've gotten so unfit that I've started like actually like losing a couple of breaths as I took the stuff upstairs. So now it's not like that. Like because I run so much, I play so much tennis, like I'm constantly trying to improve that part in me. That's another thing I learned about myself. I learned about diet. Yeah, just also like pushing yourself like to the boundaries. Like if there's a workout that this happened with one of your workouts, which was, I think, like there was like an inclined bench press that you had suggested, and it's harder to do than just the regular bench press. But then it wasn't like, oh, just do whatever you can. I wanted to kind of, push myself and get that done and keep improving on that. So move to higher weights, which I think I did. That's another thing I learned about myself, is like, if I once I really put my mind to it, even if my body is telling me like, oh, I'm tired, like there's always this extra ounce of energy that you can sort of put and go the extra mile, essentially.
Those are great lessons. When you talked about diet and you alluded to the macronutrients and the calories and kind of learning and tracking what you were doing and learning what are those in each foods, we recently had a conversation about it where I told you about that meme that I sent you afterwards of the guy looking at a plate of food and just all these math equations going through his head. And that's kind of what it feels like, right? When you're, one of the ways that we worked on nutrition together was figuring out and starting a practice of tracking the calories that you were eating, getting a certain amount of each of these macronutrients, the protein, the carbs, and the fats. And in so doing, kind of learning what of those were contained in the foods that we were eating.
Yeah.
Right. And that inevitably leads to a lot of shifting and thinking about food in general, I think.
Yeah.
And what was the reality of that for you? How did that approach to paying attention to your diet change how you looked at food?
Like, so being a vegetarian, I think, at least I don't think this is true, but for me, like most of my food, I think, is like carb rich. And it helps because like I need that energy to do the running and to play tennis. So it helps. But at the same time, I've noticed that if I don't consume enough proteins, then I'll start losing muscle mass because I'm running so much, I'm playing tennis so much. So I start getting skinnier, and it's like up and down basically. Once I start consuming the proteins, then it's very easy for me to bulk up. It's like very easy. So one thing I started paying attention to was the fact that just my daily diet, like just ignoring the changes I would make to it to get protein. Just my daily diet was very carb rich and had very little protein in it. So it actively made me try to, find other protein sources, just make those changes, right? And just try to reduce the number of carbs as well and just get more protein into it. And then also just realizing little things like, as I said, like a banana actually has like, I think 30 grams of carbs, I think, just like a medium one or something. And it was pretty like surprising because I thought like, oh, you can eat as much of this and nothing's going to happen, but it has a lot of carbs in it. So that was another thing. But then the flip side is I can't also eliminate all the carbs, right? Because I've actually noticed this. Like if on days I just consume less carbs than I usually do, like the next day in the gym, like on the treadmill, like it's hard to finish that workout. It's hard in tennis. Like I'll start feeling weak. That's another thing that I learned during this process is you can't just be on the extremes. You literally have to find that balance for yourself that works for you. So yeah, because previously, like I used to also like diet, just like really extreme diets, like, just cut out like bread and dairy and whatever, which is okay. But then it cannot be on the extreme level that you don't have any more energy in your body. So that's also something I learned from you, because the sort of when we started tracking the food, I remember like a month and a half in, I knew I was working out and I was seeing the results, but it didn't feel like I was going through an intense diet, or it didn't feel like, I was feeling weak from, monitoring my diet or anything. It was really good.
And you're expressing too what a lot of people experience when they go on a typical diet, right? Which is a little bit more on the extreme end and a lot of restriction, and it's pretty miserable, quite frankly, when you're doing it.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about learning what's going on behind the scenes, right? Learning about the protein, the carbs, the fats, the importance of carbohydrates, the importance of getting the right amounts, being able to track the calories and figure out kind of how all these puzzle pieces fit together, is that regardless of what our goal is, if we want to build muscle, if we want to lose fat, if we want to, improve our cardio endurance, whatever goal you may have, you don't have to, when you have that understanding of the behind the scenes workings of the nutrition and how all these numbers fit together and what foods are great sources of these things, you don't have to stop all that to go on one of these extreme diets to make changes. All you have to do is tweak some of the numbers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which makes
that's the biggest thing I learned from this was you shouldn't do these extreme diets, because like you're literally depriving your body of food. So you need that balance. Like I said, I feel it can't be those extremes. It has to be like the balance. And for that, you kind of need either you do your own research about it and figure it out yourself. Like in issues like this, I tend to kind of rely on somebody else who has the knowledge, in this case, you. So that was like helpful for me to kind of, find the right balance. Yeah.
It's very great advice. I am curious to know what specific advice you would give to a younger version of yourself. So like, think of you going through your master's PhD program, not doing a whole lot of physical activity, really stressed, really busy, not taking great care of your health. What advice would you give to that version of you?
I would say take the time to go to the gym, or like just take the time to work out, because like I feel at a certain point we kind of overemphasize on certain things. Like if there's a deadline, then we feel that's our world, right? Like that's the only thing that matters. I would tell myself, a younger version of myself, that that's not the only thing that matters. Like you can literally just spend an hour at the gym and spend the remaining time working. That's fine. But that 1 hour in the gym will influence the remaining sort of 10 hours that you work. So even if you cannot find the time to do it, try to find the time to do it. Like 24 hours there's a cricketer in India, MS Dhoni. I'm a huge fan of his. And he always says like 24 hours in a day is like more than enough for what you need to do. Like it's more than enough, because sometimes people say, oh, I wish I had more hours during the day. That's not true. Like you can actually, 24 hours is quite a lot. And if you really like put your mind to it, you can like very efficiently like make use of those hours, get your 8 hours of sleep or whatever. So yeah, like I tell the younger version of myself that, work is not the only thing. There's other aspects to life. So just focus on that too.
Great advice. I love it. I want to end it there. Thank you so much again, Mohit, for coming on the podcast with me. And really great advice. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. If you feel inspired by this story, please share it with a friend. If you'd like to book a free discovery call to talk with an A-Team coach, head to the episode description or visit us at ateamfit.com. That's ATEAMFIT.com. We'll see you again soon.